Good evening. My name is Father Daniel Huang, and I will be your moderator tonight. On behalf of Father Nuno de Silva Gonçalves, the rector of the Pontifical Gregorian University, it is my privilege and joy to welcome you all to this cycle of conferences commemorating the first anniversary of Pope Francis's landmark encyclical, Fratelli tutti. And we are very honored this evening to be able to welcome not just one, but two cardinals. Our speaker, His Eminence, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, Prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. I'll say a little more about him afterwards. And in front here we have His Eminence, Michael Cherney, our brother Jesuit, who heads the Migrants and Refugees section of the Dicastery for promoting integral human development. I hope I got that right. Welcome, Eminence. As we all know, the pandemic has been a time of masking and unmasking. We continue to wear masks, but the pandemic has unmasked so much of the world's brokenness: inequality, poor and corrupt governance, heightened social aggression, the loss of a sense of common good, and so forth. But in the midst of this global pandemic, Pope Francis published Fratelli tutti October last year, a powerful prophetic word of hope, reminding us that God created all human beings equal in dignity and has called us to live as brothers and sisters, and inviting us all to dream of building a new humanity founded on God's dream for us. In order to make better known and to deepen our understanding of Pope Francis's rich and inspiring vision, the Gregorian University has organized this series of conferences. So every Thursday, from today until December the 16th, speakers from the various faculties, institutes, and centers of the Gregorian University will reflect on different aspects of Fratelli tutti from the point of view of their respective disciplines. We are very grateful to Georgetown University, our collaborator in this project, for making possible the simultaneous translation of these lectures. And so we hope you will continue to join us, not only for Cardinal Tagle, but for all the lectures, so that together we can continue to dream, not just of returning to a pre-pandemic normality, but of creating together, in the words of Pope Francis, healthier societies and a more dignified world, marked by encounter, dialogue, justice, and peace. We are all blessed that to inaugurate this series, we have as our first speaker His Eminence Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, known fondly to us from the Philippines as Cardinal Chito. Cardinal Chito is an alumnus of 3 Jesuit institutions in the Philippines: San Jose Seminary, the Ateneo de Manila University, and the Loyola School of Theology. In 1992, he earned his doctorate in sacred theology at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. 5 years later, in 1997, Pope John Paul II appointed him a member of the International Theological Commission, in which he served until 2002. I don't know how many of us, 5 years after finishing your doctorate, gets nominated to this international commission. Pope Benedict XVI appointed him Archbishop of Manila in October 2011, and 1 year later, in October 2012, appointed him Cardinal. He continued as Archbishop of Manila until 2019, December 2019, when Pope Francis appointed him prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. Cardinal Chito, in his free time, also continues as president of Caritas International and president of the Catholic Biblical Federation. For your information, he has 11 honorary doctorates, among others from Fordham University in New York, the Australian Catholic University, and our alma mater, the Catholic University of America. Amidst his many commitments, he still finds time for a weekly TV show and YouTube show entitled The Word Exposed. And occasionally, you can watch this on Facebook, he has a cooking show that he does from the Colegio Filipino here in Rome. Let me conclude by saying that Cardinal Chito is well loved and deeply respected by so many for the depth and lucidity of his thought, his gifts as an effective and moving communicator, and perhaps above all, the inspiring witness of his living the gospel, especially manifested in his love for the poor and his joy and his unique, sometimes naughty sense of humor. So, enough from me. Friends, let us welcome His Eminence, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle.
Buonasera, buonasera a tutti. In English, it means, good afternoon or good evening. And warm greetings to those of you who are taking part in this series of conferences to mark the first anniversary of Pope Francis's encyclical, Fratelli tutti. I would like to thank Father Rector. I was here a few days ago also to inaugurate the licentiate program in pastoral management and leadership. Please don't get tired of me. And I would like to thank the organizing committee, Georgetown University, and Father Danny. We were together in the Ateneo de Manila and also the Catholic University of America. Your Eminence, I tremble before you because you are the expert with Father Baroni on Fratelli tutti. So please pardon please forgive my mistakes. So let me start with a comment on the method that I will try to employ in this presentation. Now, it is often said, and I've heard Cardinal Attorney say this a number of times, that Saint Francis of Assisi has been inspiring Pope Francis of Rome in the choice of topics for his encyclicals. Saint Francis's calling to rebuild God's church is connected to Evangelii Gaudium, a church that is missionary and not self-referential. Saint Francis's canticle, praising God, the Creator, and celebrating the interconnectedness of all creatures, runs through the encyclical Laudato Si, on the care of our common home. And Saint Francis's admonition to love a brother or sister, whether far from or with you, serves as the leitmotif of the encyclical Fratelli tutti. In a sense, we cannot dwell on one encyclical without touching the other two. So in my presentation, I will try to navigate through the three encyclicals, in my sharing of some random thoughts on Fratelli tutti. And please do not expect strictly and highly academic treatise here. So, for the first part, which I will title, Getting in Touch with the Bible and Daily Life. And I hope Pope Francis will forgive me if I engage in a brief survey of episodes in the Bible featuring blood brothers and sisters. Now, after all, we're talking about fraternity. So why not look at how the Bible treats blood brothers and sisters? Cain and Abel were the first siblings that come to mind. Genesis 4. Their story reminds us that the first recorded crime in the Bible after the fall of Adam and Eve was fratricide, a person killing his own brother. The first manifestation of the fall. But God saved fraternity by putting a mark on Cain, and I quote, so that no one would kill him at sight. We recall Abraham's sons, Ishmael, son of the slave Hagar, and Isaac, son of Sarah. With a heavy heart, Abraham sent Ishmael and Hagar away, but God promised to make a nation of Ishmael also. And how can we forget Esau and Jacob, the twin sons of Isaac? Genesis 25. Even in Rebekah's womb, they jostled against each other. And we know the rest of the story. Jacob's sons tried to kill Joseph, who later decided, and then later on they decided to sell him to Ishmaelite traders, Genesis 37. So we have an early case of human trafficking and perpetrated by brothers. But God used the forced migration of Jacob's sons to Egypt because of hunger to restore their brotherhood. Aaron and Miriam were jealous of their brother Moses' privileged standing before God and the people. When Miriam was stricken with leprosy as punishment, it was Moses, the brother, who pleaded with God for her healing. Numbers, the book of Numbers, chapter 12. Don't worry, now I jump to the time of Jesus. According to the Gospel of John, chapter 1, Andrew, who had known Jesus first, joyfully brought his brother Simon, later to be called Peter, to Jesus. And then we have James and John, sons of Zebedee, or really brothers by blood and also by a common ambition. Give us the best seats in your glorious kingdom. They loved each other. Mark 10. And the siblings, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus of Bethany, intimate friends of Jesus. And the sisters had different approaches in welcoming him as a guest. What am I driving at? God is the source and protector of fraternity and sorority. And Jesus went beyond blood relations. Whoever does the will of my heavenly Father is my brother, sister, and mother. Matthew 12. The letter to the Hebrews describes Jesus, our high priest and compassionate intercessor before the Father, in these words: He who consecrates and those who are being consecrated all have one origin. Therefore, He is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. Hebrews 12. What a beautiful vision and dream fulfilled by God, revealed but also saved by God occasionally in Jesus and the Spirit. And I hope there will be more researches on this. Now, the Bible provides a compelling vision of God's dream of a human and fraternal world. But it would also help if we look at the world as it is, especially through direct contact with persons, families, and the various conditions of life. We see how, as Father Danny said at the beginning, we see how the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed social, cultural, economic, and political weaknesses that have been existing for a long time in our countries and in international relations, but have remained largely ignored. Unfortunately, the pandemic has made them worse. We know that a lack of fraternity or caring for other people coexists with behaviors and practices that damage creation. The neglect of neighbors and the misuse of creation are mutually dependent and reinforce each other. Pope Francis expresses this reality in the following way, and I quote, "The human environment and the natural environment deteriorate together. We cannot adequately combat environmental degradation unless we attend to causes related to human and social degradation." Laudato Si, number 48. And while environmental disasters affect all people living in a place, in a particular place, the poor are more devastated than the others. And after a calamity, whether natural or caused by human beings, the poor are easily forgotten and they remain forgotten. Unfortunately, even during this pandemic. Conversion to social friendship and ecological conversion do not come automatically. It is so easy for us as a human family to fall back to the status quo of indifference. Now, Pope Francis sees one possible reason among many reasons for this neglect of the poor and also neglect of creation. And I quote, "This is due partly to the fact that many professionals, opinion makers, communications media, and centers of power located in affluent urban areas are far removed from the poor, with little direct contact with their problems. They live and reason from the comfortable position of a high level of development and quality of life well beyond the reach of majority of the world's population. This lack of physical contact and encounter, encouraged at times by the disintegration of our cities, can lead to a numbing of conscience and to tendentious analysis which neglect parts of reality." Laudato Si 49. We hope that this does not and would not happen with us. Let it not be said that we engage only in green talk or green rhetoric or fraternal talk without forming pastoral friendship with the poor, personal encounter with the wounded earth, and personal encounter with the neglected abandoned, wounded poor, who bear the wounds of the earth, should be part of our continuing formation in caring for our common home and social friendship. I should say I have been disturbed, awakened, and formed and reformed many times by visiting places destroyed by earthquakes, typhoons, floods, toxic wastes, and wars. Yesterday, our dear friend, Bishop Antoine Odo, a Jesuit of Aleppo, came and talked with me. And you see how this good man, very strong, also bears in his body the scars of a ravaged community and earth. And as I looked at and stood speechless before collapsed houses, buildings, and churches, my heart bled to see unburied corpses on the streets, grieving mothers, helpless fathers, hungry children. For me, refugee camps have offered sights, smells, sounds of a suffering humanity, running away from environmental disasters, poverty, and violence. These encounters have been occasions for my formation and hopefully a change of thinking and priorities. Now, my second point, conversion to justice. Justice. Pope Francis calls for integral ecology or ecological justice in the whole of the 4th chapter of Laudato Si, ending with what he calls intergenerational justice. And the first chapter of Fratelli Tutti, entitled Dark Clouds Over a Closed World, describes different manifestations of injustice. We are called to be formed again in the ways of justice as citizens of the earth and as brothers and sisters to everyone. Let me first turn to the prophet Isaiah. In the opening chapter of the book of Isaiah, the prophet gives us a description of the people Israel. He says, a people laden with wickedness. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 4. Now, what is the root of this wickedness? God says, I quote, "Children have I raised and reared, but they have disowned me. They have forsaken the Lord." The people turned to the worship of idols. Idols have taken the place of the true God. But externally, the people continued to celebrate religious festivals and to offer sacrifices, burnt offerings, prayers. So Israel could claim, "God, we have not abandoned you. Remember our offerings, our sacrifices, our prayers, our festivals." But their sacrifices are worthless and even loathsome to God, because the hands offering those sacrifices are full of blood. Isaiah 1:15. When idols are worshipped in place of the true God, the hands that offer prayers and sacrifices are often full of blood, even the blood of other human beings. But for God, the situation is not hopeless. How could Israel's prayers and sacrifices be acceptable to God again? We hear these words, "Wash yourselves clean. Put away your misdeeds before my eyes. Cease doing evil. Learn to do good. Make justice your aim. Redress the wronged. Hear the orphan's plea. Defend the widow." Isaiah 1 verse 17. So very concrete actions and very concrete human beings. Make justice your aim. This vision of Isaiah is reiterated many times and in different ways by Pope Francis in Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti. To reverse personal acts of injustice and also institutional, social, cultural, political injustices, we need conversion to the true God. In Laudato Si number 2, Pope Francis says, I quote, "We have come to see ourselves as the earth's lords and masters, entitled to plunder her at will." End of quote. For all we know, we might be the idols that we worship and serve. By contrast, Saint Francis of Assisi, who inspired the encyclical, is described as a mystic and a pilgrim who lived in simplicity and in wonderful harmony with God, with others, with nature, and with himself. Laudato Si number 10. In Fratelli Tutti number 4, Pope Francis again reminds us of Saint Francis of Assisi, who taught universal fraternity and love. Now, where does Saint Francis locate universal love? In God. God, who is love, according to the first letter of John. God is love, and those who love abide in God. So return to the true God, who is love. In God, who is the source and Father of all, and not in idols, would we see, hear, touch, approach, love, and serve those whom God loves. And that means every human being, for everyone is a child of God. Everyone is precious to God. God the Creator loves our beautiful earth, whom Saint Francis called Sister and Mother Earth. God loves all that He has created. In God, we will open ourselves to others. When we turn to idols, we begin to close our eyes, ears, hearts, and hands. We close our families and our groups, pretending that the others and the earth do not have needs. That is the result of the worship of idols. Pope Francis, in the first part of Fratelli Tutti, describes to us the many signs of a world closed. Injustice happens when we start closing ourselves to others. We defend ourselves, our interests, our groups against the others who appear as threats or even as enemies. For our self-defense and the promotion of self-interest, we will even destroy creation. Creation becomes my property to serve only me, my group, and my interests. Creation that is meant to benefit everyone is ransacked for a few people. Loving the way God loves everyone will lead us to service. In Fratelli Tutti 115, Pope Francis says, "Service is never ideological," meaning it is not just for a particular group or my group. For we do not serve ideas, we serve people. So let me rephrase it. Justice is not an idea. Justice is about people. People who must be given what they deserve: respect, recognition, and love. Justice blossoms where love is open to all. There is a beautiful description of universal love or social friendship found in Fratelli tutti, number 94. A love that is open to all, the opposite of being closed unto myself, my group, and my interests. A love that seeks union with others. A love that sees the value and beauty of others as they are, not as I want them to be. It is seeking what is good for them. It does not exclude others. It is a love that will be just, that will not oppress, manipulate, or take advantage of others. Why? Simply because this is how God loves. This is how Jesus loved. He died for all. He embraced everyone as a brother and a sister. And this is how the Spirit blows. The Spirit gathers all and recreates the world. Love, social friendship, is nurtured not just by ideas, but by encounters with real persons, especially the poor, the excluded, the vulnerable. Entering their wounds and making them my very own, listening to their stories, and realizing that we share the same dreams, the same pains, the same hopes. No? Listening to them, I hear myself. Listening to them, I hear the groanings of creation. Pope Francis invites us to live in solidarity, starting in the homes, in our families, schools, and parishes, in our use of social communication. All the avenues are there for us to build solidarity. Are we still together? Yeah. May I start my talk now? I'm just joking, just to test whether you're awake. I'm coming to so I have finished 2 parts, so 2 more parts. The third is respect, dialogue, and populism. I want to inform everyone, since I think this series of conferences will be closed by Cardinal Ayuso. So I want to inform everyone that this year marks the 10th anniversary of the document Christian Witness in a Multi-Religious World, a joint project of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, the World Council of Churches, and the World Evangelical Alliance. The call of that document for respect for all peoples and building interreligious relationship, affirmed by Fratelli tutti, faces a contemporary challenge in what is called populism. Pope Francis sees the use of populism as a key for interpreting society deeply problematic because it disregards the legitimate meaning of the word people. Fratelli tutti, 157. Social media has influenced daily language by spreading this problematic use of the words populism and populist. Pope Francis says, I quote, "As a result, they have lost whatever value they might have had and have become another source of polarization in an already divided society. Efforts are made to classify entire peoples, groups, societies, and governments as populist or not. Nowadays, it has become impossible for someone to express a view on any subject without categorized one way or the other, either to be unfairly discredited or to be praised to the skies. End of quote. Fratelli tutti, 156. It is sad to note that so-called populist demagogues use, or better, misuse, religion for their interests, undermining efforts at developing interreligious relationships and friendships. I suggest that a serious analysis of populism be done in the light of Fratelli tutti. Some studies on populism have already been done, and thanks to Father Danny, who has helped me locate some of these materials. Pankaj Mishra's Age of Anger, A History of the Present, sketches a history of the paranoia and hatred we are experiencing in our time. One of his basic insights is that people who were excluded from the promised benefits of modernity have become frustrated and angry. Then they become easy prey for demagogues who ignite their anger towards elites and other imaginary enemies. They rally behind these messianic figures, some of which utilize religious language and images to generate an almost religious battle against those who do not belong to their group. It's almost like a religious crusade. His explanation of the anger that makes the excluded sector of society entrust their future to messianic or paternalistic leaders could motivate, and hopefully could motivate the religions of the world to attend to the excluded or those in the peripheries, as Pope Francis often invites us to do. The victims of social exclusion should not be victimized further by these agitators. They need and deserve genuine respect, concern, and caring. Another study that may provide useful ideas is the book Saving the People: How Populists Hijack Religion. The authors show that the populist use or instrumentalization of religion emphasizes not belief. It's not belief that is at the focus of their concern, rather belonging to an us against a them. The us represents the good people that must wage a battle against the evil them. Among the suspicious others are the immigrants and those who belong to so-called minority groups or religions. The populist agenda thrives on the blurring of the distinction between political positions and religious belief. If the authors of these books, if their analysis is correct, then religions, the religions of the world, are challenged to find the right path of social engagement or social apostolate that does not make religion a tool for the promotion of a political group's interests, rather than the common good, promotion of the common good. Pope Francis says in Fratelli tutti, 160, closed populist groups distort the word people, since they are not talking about a true people. So whenever they use the word people, they are not really talking about the true people. Now my last section. Some of you smiled. Said, what a relief, finally. Building peace. In Laudato Si number 57, Pope Francis states, I quote, "It is foreseeable that once certain resources have been depleted, the scene will be set for new wars, albeit under the guise of noble claims. War always does grave harm to the environment and to the cultural riches of peoples, risks which are magnified when one considers nuclear arms and biological weapons." The end of the quote. Violent conflicts wound creation and human beings. We need to be formed in the art of peace building. In Fratelli Tutti 259, the Pope talks of a world war fought piecemeal. He always talks about this world war. Armed conflicts are rooted in and propagated by lies, injustice, and vengeance. It is sad to note again that in some cases, religion is invoked as a justification to start and to spread violence. The Holy Father repeatedly makes an appeal in Fratelli Tutti to stop seeking vengeance and instead to build peace. Violence destroys human beings and creation. Vengeance begets violence. Vengeance passes on destructive prejudices and a polluted earth to the future generations. At this very moment, as we speak, we are scandalized at the huge amount of money spent on arms and weapons that is better used for food, water, education, medicines, housing, and jobs for the poor, as well as for cultivating and nurturing the earth. I believe it is worth reflecting on what Pope Francis calls a penitential memory as a path to peace. Fratelli Tutti 226. Conflicts and violence become part of individual and collective memories. Memories of violence might lead to violent attitudes and behaviors. For a wounded memory to become an agent of peace, it must acquire a penitential character based on truth, justice, and forgiveness. Truth. No matter how painful the process might be, enemies need to face and speak the truth to each other. The sincere search for truth on the part of the contrasting parties could provide a common ground for encounter and dialogue. According to the Pope, a penitential memory is one that can accept the past in order not to cloud the future with their own regrets, problems, and plans. Only by basing themselves on the historical truth of events will they be able to make a broad and persevering effort to understand one another and to strive for a new synthesis for the good of all. Fratelli Tutti 226. The memory that seeks conversion to the truth refuses to become a breeding ground for future hatred and destruction. The Pope says, truth should not lead to revenge, but rather to reconciliation and forgiveness. 227. In a dialogue between enemies, but a dialogue governed by truth, everyone is open to the possibility that the other who might be in error or have acted badly could have a legitimate point of view. For even one's enemies may possess elements of truth. Fratelli Tutti 228. Justice. We already said a lot about justice, but in the context of the penitential memory. There will never be peace anywhere and at any time without justice. The promotion of justice is indispensable for peace building. But the Holy Father cautions us, we must be careful not to equate justice with revenge. Talk of justice could be used to hide a thirst for revenge. Nevertheless, we must recognize that violent conflicts and their perpetuation are often related to injustice, inequality, oppression, manipulation, and exclusion of others. The misuse of the goods of the earth due to greed inflicts violence on the poor. A penitential memory seeks justice through the building of a new society based on sharing and service rather than greed and exclusion. Acting justly means restoring a basic sense of belonging to everyone. Paragraph 230. And protecting the dignity of all brothers and sisters, especially the victims of injustice. Number 233. The Holy Father says in number 231, I quote, "Those who work for tranquil social coexistence should never forget that inequality and lack of integral human development make peace impossible." So justice is not about vengeance, but the reconstruction of the human family, where everyone is respected and everyone has access to the fruits of creation and of human labor. Finally, forgiveness. Peace comes from forgiveness. But we need to avoid misconceptions of forgiveness and reconciliation. Like, for example, now, forgiveness is yielding ground to the enemy, or it is a sign of weakness. It is a renunciation of one's rights, and therefore a tacit approval for evil to continue. This is in Fratelli Tutti 236. These are misconceptions. According to the Holy Father, such distortions of forgiveness lead to fatalism, apathy, and injustice, or even intolerance and violence. Number 237. Forgiveness does not mean allowing falsehood and injustice to prosper. In 242, Pope Francis says, I quote, "The important thing is not to fuel anger which is unhealthy for our soul and the soul of our people, or to become obsessed with taking revenge and destroying the other. No one achieves inner peace or returns to a normal life that way." End of quote. Now, the Holy Father recognizes, as all of us do, we cannot force anyone to forgive another person. We can only encourage and foster it, and of course, pray. Forgiving does not mean forgetting the harm one has experienced. No? We always say, oh, forgive and forget. Now, the Holy Father does not agree. He says, those who truly forgive do not forget. Instead of forgetting, they choose not to yield to the same destructive force that caused them so much suffering. Fratelli tutti 251. So I would say that forgiving is not forgetting, but remembering in a different way. I remember that the one who has wounded me is a brother or sister with whom I share common weaknesses and pains. I also remember not to inflict the wound I have experienced on other brothers and sisters and on creation. By remembering, I become truthful and just and merciful. With my brothers and sisters, we will rebuild our human family and will care for the earth remembering our pains as a source of patience and hope in the path of peace. In my visits to Syria, Lebanon, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Saigon, Cambodia, or after the earthquake in Nepal, Amatrice, Norcia, I realized, but especially in these places that I mentioned, I realized that wars come from a decision to stop treating other people as brothers and sisters. It is a decision. Wars come from a decision to dominate over others, even at the cost of destroying creation, cultures, and civilizations. It is good to go forth, to cross barriers, and enter the wounds and memories caused by wars, to groan with sisters, brothers, and creation, to ask for forgiveness, to work for peace, to build each other up, to build the future together for our common human family and our common home. And we pray that God may make his dream come true. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Eminence, for that moving discourse. If I may be so bold, to summarize in some way the rich sharing you had with us, you invited us to get in touch with God's dream of fraternity by immersing ourselves in the biblical vision and by encountering people who are suffering. And then you offered us 3 concrete paths in which fraternity as dreamt by God and as proposed by Pope Francis might be moved forward by promoting justice based on universal love rather than closed doors, by promoting dialogue and respect, especially on the part of religions, in a world in which divisions are heightened by populist leaders fueling the anger of the excluded, and in situations of wounded histories to build peace through a penitential memory that includes elements of truth, justice, and forgiveness. This was all just to give all of you a bit of time to come together. And so we will move on then with a time for discussion and reflection together. But before we do that, at the suggestion of His Eminence, we would like to introduce into the conversation 2 other experts on Fratelli tutti, so that our conversation might be richer. His Eminence Cardinal Michael Czerny, in collaboration with his co-author, Professor Christian Barone, have just come up with a new book on Fratelli tutti, and we would like to take this opportunity for them to show us the book and to give a copy both to His Eminence and to Father Rector. Would you like to say something? Here? Here?
It's a joy and a privilege to be able to take this moment to share Fraternità, Segno dei Tempi, il Magistero Sociale di Papa Francesco, which Professor Barone and I wrote, and which we're happy to say Pope Francis wrote the preface of. And so I will just read one sentence which prophetically, I think, sums up your talk very well. One sentence from the preface, which is on the back. And then I would like to present this to you as a token of our appreciation, and Professor Christian will present a copy to Father Rector for the Gregorian Library. Ciascuno di noi può contribuire a realizzare l'opera del regno di Dio nel mondo, aprendo spazi di salvezza e di liberazione, seminando la speranza, sfidando le logiche mortifere dell'egoismo con la fraternità evangelica, impegnandosi nella tenerezza e nella solidarietà a favore del prossimo, specialmente dei più poveri. Grazie, Eminenza, per averci detto questo così bellamente e con grande profondità.
Grazie. Congratulazioni.
We would now like to open the floor for questions, comments, and we want to take advantage of the fact that we have 3 experts on Fratelli tutti here. No, that's 2. Father, His Eminence is very humble, saying only 2, but 3 experts on Fratelli tutti. So we would like to invite you, if you have any comments or questions, to come up, use the microphone, introduce yourself briefly, and then direct your question to any of our resource persons. Thank you. Ci sono dei commenti? Okay. Please introduce yourself.
I took off the mask. This question is not only to take off the mask, but also to ask a question, of course. So I'm Father Laurent Bazanez. I'm the co-organizer of the cycle. I'm professor in the Faculty of Missiology in this university. Thank you very much for all what you have said. It was very profound and moving also, especially when you spoke about Bishop Antoine Odo, who is still the Bishop of Aleppo in Syria, a Jesuit, for the Chaldean community, the Chaldean church. And he was the one who ordained me as a priest in the Society of Jesus. Yeah. And I lived there before coming here. But my question is about what you have said at the end, about this decision of war. War is a decision, yes, to treat the other as not anymore my brother, to consider him as not being as a part of my mia carne, my blood. Could we say, because in fact I do think like this, but I would like maybe the debate or your considerations. Could we say also that fraternity is or should be a decision? The decision of fraternity. The expression is not mine. Is an expression from a Muslim philosopher, French Muslim philosopher, who some years ago, in a book, Plaidoyer pour la fraternité, said exactly this, that we cannot wait to be fratelli, as it is for granted that we are all brothers because we are all human beings. But we have to decide and to act in this way, to move toward this way, and to be concretely, very, very practiced. And the Pope, I think, insists a lot on this, to be, not to wait not only to dream, our dreams are bound to become true, and these kinds of dreams, according to me. So would you, yes, I think that you believe like the same way, but would you say this kind of expression, decision to fraternity, and in which way we may implement it.
I will start. I will say something, and I'm sure the two of them are very eager also to just like the many other virtues that we talk about. Yes, fraternity is both. Fraternity is both like a gift. We know that in most religions there is at least this idea or concept or teaching that this is the will of God. So it is presented as a gift. But just like any gift, we need to decide to receive it or to ignore it. There are many other gifts, but then it is already part of human responsibility, a response, a decision, whether to see it as a gift, to consider it as a threat, or something that is not useful for me. Maybe there are some situations in life that will heighten my decision, my conviction to look at it again as a gift and pursue it. There are some situations in life that might block my decision to go to walk that path, But if wars or destruction, could be a product of one's decision, the same way, could be said. The same thing could be said of fraternity. So definitely there is a human decision involved. But in our case, we say it is also a gift. So we ask for it from God, but then we have the responsibility to accept it or not and to act on it.
I think there are some very interesting compliments to what you have said, to the question. One is to say that fraternity is both our reality, our origin. We are born brothers and sisters of the same Creator, Father, Mother. It's both our reality and our mission. So yes, we are brothers and sisters, but that doesn't mean that the story ends with that. It becomes a mission which we can then either embrace or reject, which we can either develop or distort. So that would be in addition to the idea. I would raise also maybe a doubt about the question of decision, and I don't know if you will mind my doing so by mentioning the French Revolution. But the fraternité of the French Revolution was a decision. And I would say it was the poorest of the three decisions, at least in its realization. And I think that's something that we realize also, is that I ask myself if we can just decide for fraternity, or whether we have to accept, in a sense, the divine origin and the divine call. Whether, in other words, can fraternity be a merely human enterprise?
Thank you very much. Father Prem, did you wanted to ask a question? Please come.
I am Prem Khalko from India, Jesuit. Thanks for affirming that populism destroys fraternity. And I come from India, and now we have one head of the government which is really destroying people, in the capital letters, yes. So I totally agree with you. Thank you very much, Your Eminence. Now, I would like to ask one question, because these demigods that we're creating, that is destroying, actually creating anger against another, we and others, that is dividing, the social media is playing a huge role, vital role. So how would we use this means of social communication, especially social media today to develop and also nurture this fraternity, universal fraternity? I think probably some words would also suffice to also integrate what our reflections on universal fraternity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father. The social media, the world of internet, etc. During the pandemic, with a certain carryover to now, has been a blessing. Also, thanks to social communications, we were able to continue with some of our activities, and some activities even flourished, thanks to the use of social media. Father Danny said that in my spare time, I also try to behave like the president of the Catholic Biblical Federation. And during one of our executive board meetings, at the height of the pandemic, the regional representatives were all surprised. There was a common experience. The requests for Bible formation increased, especially through the tools of social communication, the videos and everything. So beyond our plans and expectations, so thanks be to God. But as you said also, as Vatican II also indicated already, many of our achievements as a human family could be ambivalent. They could be used also for destructive purposes. And one such use is fomenting this hatred of people towards the others. Now, I don't really know how to fully address it. The only thing that I could say is this. First, this is a challenge. How do we educate or form the young and those who are guiding the young, like the parents, in the just, truthful, respectful, and responsible use of social communication? We realize that many parents cannot guide their children because they are not they're not into social communications. Many bishops cannot guide their priests in the use of social communications because some bishops are not adept. I don't know if that should be included as a requirement now for becoming a provincial or as a local superior, so that they could, I don't know, no? Or maybe that should be part now of the preparation for marriage or family ministry, because it is one thing. It's the world in which our young people have been born into. The second thing is not only to think of the social media as means. The more I get into it, the more I realize that it is a world in itself, with its own language, with its own ways of looking at the world, at reality, its own brand of making people relate to one another. So it is not just a set of means, but a whole world that needs to be evangelized, as it were. We need to bring the gospel. We don't only use them as means to bring across the gospel, but how do we make that world really the locus, the space of the Christian values. But for that to happen, we need to be present there. If we are not present there, the lacuna will be filled in by somebody else. So we really have to be present. And finally, I said I have not much to say, but I think I'm saying a lot already. I don't know if maybe the Gregorian could help in this. We have young people especially who are already very much like they're well versed in what they call artificial intelligence and the use of the digital intelligence, etc. We cannot put a stop to that, but how do we form other intelligences? Like the social media, because of the brief messages, etc. There is no more appreciation for context. Those who are accustomed to use the use of social media, they find it tedious to go through the messy business of trying to understand contexts. But that's a form of intelligence. If we want truth, justice, you need context. That's one form of intelligence. The other is, of course, emotional, relational intelligence. The business world also talks about cultural intelligence, which is needed for fraternity, cultural intelligence. And one author even said, inspired intelligence. The world is filled with distrust of the other. So you need this intelligence, which means you can generate trust. They call it intelligence, but it is really a lifestyle, the quality of a person, where this person is able to generate trust. So while we cannot prevent artificial intelligence from spreading, how can we take care of the other intelligences in the world that we need? Yeah.
Professor Bongiovanni, I'd like to.
Grazie Eminenza. Ambrogio Bongiovanni, sono docente della Facoltà di Missiologia e direttore del Centro di Studi Interreligiosi. Sono curioso di sapere come lei ha, comparato, se lo ha fatto, sicuramente, il documento di Abu Dhabi sulla fratellanza e Fratelli tutti, ma nel senso anche della terminologia, cioè se ha trovato uno sviluppo in Fratelli tutti. Ovviamente sono due documenti contestualmente diversi, anche di importanza diversa, è chiaro, no? Però trova in Fratelli tutti uno sviluppo, qualcosa che era rimasto un po' in sospeso di chiarimento, cioè Papa Francesco ha voluto dare anche qualche risposta in seguito a quei punti di domanda che c'erano, che emergevano dal documento sulla fratellanza umana?
Professore, tanti grazie, però non sono degno di rispondere, non sono capace. Però la verità è, c'è una lunga citazione del documento di Abu Dhabi, l'ultima parte dell'enciclica dei Fratelli tutti. Da una prospettiva, possiamo dire che il Santo Padre ha inserito questo documento, questa citazione, nella fine, forse come un sommario, un sommario, una sintesi degli altri punti, Questa è una possibile interpretazione, Però se c'è una evoluzione, mi dispiace, non ho studiato questo aspetto. Forse i nostri due altri esperti possano dare alcune indicazioni. aiutami. Lo spirito di fratellanza, di fraternità.
I think that I don't think that the document on human fraternity is at the end of the encyclical in order to sum it up. I don't think so, no. I think that it's, first of all, it's at the beginning, and one should read very carefully how it is mentioned in the beginning. It is compared with the role of Saint Francis in the inspiration of Laudato Si. So too, the document on human fraternity has an analogous or similar role at the beginning of Fratelli tutti. Then I think, as everyone in this room and even online, also online, would know, the Declaration on Human Fraternity is a great achievement within a whole series, nearly an infinite series of constraints. How many difficulties were there to say what they said together? How difficult is it for others to understand or even read and consider, not to mention accept the document? So it's a very precious and, in a sense, delicate and fragile declaration. And I think that what Pope Francis has done is, with his typical enormous respect, the last thing he would want to do is impose. What he has done, he has said, thank you for accompanying me in this extended meditation which we have had. Now see what the document means to you after you have read Fratelli tutti. That's what it means, I think. And not more, but also not less than that. And I can say that I had the occasion, for other reasons, to meet the great Imam also, the Grand Imam, and in a sense to ask him to do something similar. What would happen if the Grand Imam would also take the joint document and make his own meditation on it, so that we could then appreciate it from what he brings, what he brought to and brings to this important but fragile and, in a sense, limited gesture.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments, observations? We have, yes, please.
Ecco, so che Sua Eminenza conosce anche lo spagnolo, diverse lingue, non è un problema parlare in italiano. Ecco, io sono un diacono, sono dottorando dell'Istituto di Spiritualità di questa università, però anche essendo in contatto con la gente, no? Nella pastorale, tutte queste cose che vengono dette, per esempio questa apertura che il Papa Francesco presenta, il dialogo con le altre religioni, diciamo che non è una cosa nuova, perché certamente dal Concilio in poi è tutto questo sviluppo, no? Però anche nel popolo di Dio o nella risonanza che sentiamo, no? Si sente questo, ma noi cristiani siamo sempre aperti a tutti, sia ai musulmani, agli ebrei, cerchiamo, no? Ci stanno delle istituzioni, andiamo verso gli altri, però moltissime volte no, o ci scontriamo con che non è accolto anche questa apertura nostra, no? O che dovrebbe avere il cristiano. E un po' questo è un punto di difficoltà nel senso pratico. Grazie.
Sì, reverendo diacono, grazie. Ma lei aveva la sua formazione nelle Filippine, sì? Un po'. No, un po'. Novitiate. Dove? San Pablo. Laguna. Laguna. So, posso rispondere in Tagalog, in Filipino? Opo. See, right, yes. When I was reflecting on forgiveness, Pope Francis was very clear. Yeah, we cannot force anyone to forgive. You can encourage, but it is, again, it's a gift of the Lord, and then it's a decision. In the same way, with dialogue, as you described it, sometimes one party, I will not say the Christians alone, because you also have Christians who are quite closed. One party could be very, very open to dialogue, and then the other party might be closed or not ready. Here, I think, comes the whole mystery of it, and the determination, as the Cardinal Czerny used, he used the term mission. You cannot force someone to dialogue. If someone engages in dialogue because he or she was forced, then that is not dialogue. I remember when I was a parish priest, for these canonical interviews before marriage, I asked one of those getting married, so you are really decided to marry this man? And she said, I have no choice. He was the only one who courted me, so I better grab him. I said, what shall I do? If there are canonists here, what should you do? Now, should you proceed with the wedding? I said, I have no choice. No, but if it is not chosen, then it is not a value. No? In this case, dialogue. No? In fact, in one meeting, I don't remember whether it is in the Council for Interreligious Dialogue or in Ecumenism, I think I was the one who raised a similar question. How do we accompany people who are ready to dialogue, but the dialogue partner refuses? It is a cross that many bear, and if we don't accompany them, they might give up and say, "You don't want it, then you close the door. I also close my door." But then that mission, how do we keep that conviction, that power alive? If I read, if I follow some of the writings of Pope Francis, I think one of the what do you call this, the motivations that would help a person pursue this dialogue is gratitude. If the person has experienced from God and others the beauty of being welcomed, being respected, then that person will have this joyful memory that leads to gratitude. And even if there are failures and rejection, they will say, yeah, I have had a good experience of having been listened to and having been received. I will not give up. I will continue. But it's not easy, huh?
Please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Mustafa Cenap Aydın. I'm the director of Histotevere Muslim. Myself an ex-student of Gregorian University. Thank you very much, Eminence, for your talk. I would like to join in this lovely discussion about interfaith dialogue, because this morning I was lecturing to a group of Indian students, Hindu, Muslim, and Christian, this morning, and this issue came up again, which is more difficult, inter-religious dialogue or intra-religious dialogue. And our conclusion was the latter one. It is usually very difficult, to convince our fellow Muslims, in my case, our fellow Catholics, in your case, to convince, to dialogue among each other. And that's why the challenges, difficulties mentioned about dialogue is very common. And I think, as you have mentioned, Fratelli tutti and also document of Abu Dhabi, they are, very important inspirations for all of us to go further, even though difficulties are always over there. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, sir. I actually deleted one in my original plan for the lecture. I deleted one part, which is for Christians we call ecumenism, because as you said, even among some Christians, they say it is for them more pleasant to engage in interreligious dialogue. But ecumenical dialogue, the dialogue among Christians, where each group claims to have the interpretation, right interpretation of Christianity, they say it is difficult. And then also even within the same confession, as Father mentioned, it's not just the faith that can cause division. Sometimes it's ethnic reasons. You belong to the same parish, the same diocese, but then because you come from different ethnic backgrounds, then this is public knowledge. The newly appointed bishop of a diocese in South Sudan, before he could even be ordained and take possession, they tried to kill him. And but it is a miracle, No arteries, no veins were hit. Even the doctors could not explain, But then the trauma. And the investigations so far have led to 3 priests. How do you, will you proceed knowing that there is not just opposition, but even threat to life? If you do not proceed, then they might say, we have triumphed. So and it is within the family. That's why I started my sharing with families, fratricide. We might be tempted to look only the bigger picture, but hey, right there, and from there it spreads.
Yes, please.
Hello, Your Eminence. I'm Bernardo. I'm a priest, a Mexican-American priest from San Diego, California. I have a question similar to the deacons. He spoke a little bit about religion. I'm just curious to see, what do you think will be the moral impact of Fratelli tutti in the realm of immigration itself? Yes, it is known that cultures enrich society. Where I come from, we have Posadas, we have Guadalupe, we have Simbangabi in a matter of weeks. But at the same time, if the ears do not want to hear, the message cannot really go forth. What do you think then would be the impact, or perhaps even a good approach in this situation?
How do you deal with people who are not welcome or in concrete sense?
This is related to immigration. Yeah, immigration. Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, I got distracted because you mentioned Simbang Gabi, and all of a sudden, I said, "Wow." And then I lost you already after Simbang Gabi. Christmas, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. Well, Merry Christmas. Yeah. In Fratelli Tutti, the Holy Father has a section there, and I think we really need to, and Cardinal Czerny is in that section, the immigration section of the Dicastery for Human Development, Integral Human Development. But I think he has a lot to say. But I just want to highlight one point, and it is this: when we talk about welcoming, protecting, promoting, defending, the immigrants. Now, some do not agree and some do not want to welcome, but those who agree to welcome immigrants, the tendency is to rush through what they call integration. Let them be integrated into the receiving culture. Now, not bad at all, but my question is, what do they understand by integration? I think what Fratelli Tutti is proposing is that there will be some sort of reciprocity and mutuality, where it is not just one people that receives, and the other party just gives, but in this phenomenon of welcoming and receiving, it is a mutuality. The migrants have something to share of who they are, to the host country, and the host community definitely also has something to share. But it is this mutuality, so that the migrants won't have to, as it were, negate their culture and their identity, and the receiving party recognizes that these people come with a lot of needs, but with also a lot of riches to share, So this was the rush to integration, which is one way, a one-way street, is something that might be like even offensive. You are being told to deny who you are. That's very violent.
We now listen to the expert on...
There's really nothing worse than to be called the expert, because then everybody knows. So I won't accept that. No, I think that what Cardinal Tagle responded to your question is, in a sense, a bit further down the path than what I think your question, or what the question of many people is. I don't think that our current controversies and difficulties have so much to do with integration. It has to do with the first two steps that the Pope taught: welcome and protect, to welcome and to protect. My proposal might be heretical. I've not tested it with my colleagues, but I ask myself, who were you when you asked your question? Did you ask your question as an American or as a priest? And we usually don't make this, or as a Christian. Yeah? In other words, we don't usually make this distinction, and maybe it's not a good distinction in many other situations. But here I have the feeling that as an American, in this case, there is a whole series of problems which you inevitably have to face as a citizen. and the responsibility of your government and the policies and, in your case, the electoral process and a whole lot of complications. I have the feeling that as a Christian and a follower of Pope Francis, that is not the arena in which you are expected to respond. You are expected to respond as a Christian. And so I will say it like this. I think that at this point, in these highly polarized situations like North America, especially the United States, and in big parts of Europe also, as Christians, we need to put our head down and just welcome and protect. Just welcome, just keep on welcoming and keep on protecting. And then let's see what political implications that might possibly have. But it is not our problem as Christians to solve the political problem. And I don't think that we should allow ourselves to be drawn 100% into that, because we will not emerge. We will not succeed and we will not emerge. But I do think that our pastoral response is enormously eloquent, also politically. But it has to be a pastoral response. It's not an argument about policies or opportunity or national security or all those other things. So politically, it's extremely complex, and I have no way to comment on it, and I shouldn't comment on it. But from the point of view of our faith and our mission and our ministry, we must keep on ministering. And although it's hard to believe sometimes because of the media bias or point of view, in fact, Christians are in fact more welcoming than the impression given. There is a lot more welcome going on, and it's much more generous than what is allowed to filter into the public social media sphere. So that would be, now, we could have a debate if this was another session about whether the distinction is a good one, but practically at this point I think it might be a good way forward.
According to our schedule, we're supposed to be able to go to 7, but I think that the fact that Cardinal Tagle got distracted by Simbangavi suggests that maybe it's time to end this very rich talk by His Eminence, but also the very rich exchange, supplemented very, very wonderfully by Cardinal Czerny. So before we end, in the name of Father Rector, Father Bazanez, who along with myself is a coordinator of this series, I'd like to thank all of you for coming, and I would like to make a little publicità. Please come back. Next week, he's not yet a cardinal, but Father Jerry Whelan will begin the series among ordinary people, non-cardinals, and he will speak on religions at the service of fraternity, dialogue, and starting from the truth. Starting anew from the truth. So we would be very happy to see you again next week. Please join me in thanking His Eminence, Cardinal Tagle, and His Eminence, Cardinal Czerny, for enriching our afternoon. Thank you very much.